Good morning and welcome to Inside the Market. My name is David Jacobson, and today we have a special guest in addition to our Jim Barry. Thanks for being here, Jim. I'm going to introduce my guest, but before I do that, the market has been crazy in many different ways. Values going up, sometimes unexpected. We have just seen cars blowing past reserves and all kinds of crazy things going on, which sometimes causes a lot of people to bring their expectations up. Not always the right thing to do as far as the auctions, but we'll talk about that. Today's guest is going to shed some light on this exact subject. John Wiley, who is the Manager of Valuation Analytics at Hagerty, and I want to welcome you, John, for joining us today from Seattle.
Yep. Hello, everybody. David, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thanks for waking up. I know it's a little past 7 in the morning there.
No problem.
You're a trooper. So we're going to jump right in. I know that Jim and I have been having a lot of discussions here about values and talking to a lot of our bidders and possible bidders and consigners here about valuations, and it's not as easy as it used to be to predict. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to get, what does Hagerty see as the most notable market changes over the last 6 months by make or specific models? What's your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the big change in the market, especially in the past 6 months, has been the growth in the online auction market and online listings. And I think that's drawn in a lot of people. And I think they're typically looking for vehicles that are fun to drive and also reasonably affordable, but also pretty accessible. So cars that are not too hard to find. And I think those are the kind of the things that really seem to be changing the market in the past 6 months.
It's interesting. So basically what we're seeing is, and I think that what you're saying is that there's a lot of cars that are more accessible, and it's bringing people out that maybe have never thought about buying one because they couldn't find them. They're more accessible than ever before, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of, with online auctions and listings, there is the opportunity to find that vehicle that you didn't know about before, and it might be across the country or it might be in another part of the world. But I think people are often, I think the big growth is in sort of the more familiar vehicles. So cars like Porsche Boxster, first generation car, also the Datsun 240Z. Those cars we're seeing a lot of interest in those.
That's interesting. I know a lot of the Japanese cars were popular years ago, and now that group of people that are able to afford them now, and with the ease of finding them, is really stirring that market up. And I know Jim and I, since we went past Porsche and we're involved with a lot of Mercedes, BMWs, and a lot of the Japanese market, Jim, is we've been watching that as well, and we see that same trend happening.
Yeah, and what's funny is we're seeing a lot of the Porsche users that we have, when we speak to them, are buying, like that Datsun that sold the other day. That was someone that bought a GT3 on our site and stuff like that. So there seems to be a little, commonality between the buyers with those types of cars.
Without a doubt, yeah. and especially the generation that's coming up here now. They are not, there's a lot of older hardcore Porsche guys, and we see that a lot of the younger Porsche collectors or enthusiasts are more diverse in their wants and in their tastes, I should say. And I'm sure that affects it as well.
It's with Hagerty we have our insurance business, and we get a lot of people coming to us looking to insure vehicles, and that's we call these like policy quotes. So either through the website or through the phone, they come and say, hey, I'm looking at buying this vehicle. I think it's worth X. What's the premium going to be? But from those quotes, we get demographic information, so we know where they live and their age too.
Right.
So we can see what are the demographics behind a particular vehicle. And one of the interesting things is sort of the breakout of the Porsche 911 market, and there is a bit of a skew in terms of the older, more expensive Porsche 911s, the air-cooled cars, the long hoods, the short wheelbase cars. They're still pretty expensive for a lot of enthusiasts, so it's typically a little bit of an older enthusiast that likes those, whereas the more affordable, the 996, the SC, those are typically more younger enthusiasts, so millennials might like those just because they're a little bit more reasonably priced.
Well, there's the answer to a question over the last few months is why has the SCs, the Carreras, 996s for that matter, going up at a different rate than an F body, or even a 356 that kind of flatlined? It's because that buyer has money, is willing to spend it, and has come to an age now where they have this spendable, I guess, income. Normally, we're going and we're watching growth happen over a reasonably long period of time. This growth has happened over the shortest period of time that I have ever seen. So we're looking at usually a little bit of a climb, a dip, but this was almost like a torpedo. So having said that, what is Hagerty seeing in the future, the near future?
Yeah, well, I think it's that rapid growth is probably a part of just online auctions. And it used to be that the auction market and the most visible part of the car market were these auctions. And, it was January auction cycle and, in Scottsdale, and then Amelia Island in March, and then sort of Pebble Beach in August. And so there were these, just every few months there'd be kind of an update to the market. But, with online auctions, it's every day that you get a new price information on the market. And so I think that's really changing people's awareness and understanding of the pricing dynamics of different vehicles.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're going to roll right into a perfect example of that. We always knew that we'd sit over here and we'd say, okay, let's see what's going to happen in Scottsdale, and then we can kind of gauge where our values are going to be. And everyone will get together after the auctions and come up with the new valuations of asking prices and so forth. But so 3 days ago, Pcarmarket, John, I'll show this over here. This was a 91 F40 that we had sold that actually was recorded as the highest public price ever for an F40 at just a little over 1.9 million with 2,800 miles. Lovely car. The owner's going to absolutely be thrilled with this car. So there's a couple ways to look at this. Here's the new market. Here's a new market. A car like this may have been 1.5 or 1.6 3 years ago-ish. But this is the way my feeling was before this car was sold. This car is either going to sell and be the last car with this mileage and this condition. It's going to be the last car under 2 million, or it's going to be the first car over 2 million sold publicly. And it just went just under 2 million. I see a big upside for these cars in this condition, a U.S. version with, I think, in the mid-twos produced. What's your thoughts about the result on this car and the values going forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned that that previously sold in that sort of 1.5 to 1.6 range, and this car actually did sell back in 2015 for 1.62 million. So it's appreciated since then, which I think is interesting. And we have Hagerty price guide values that sort of they're a little bit backwards looking in terms of value ranges. But yeah, the condition one value of a 91 Ferrari F40 was 1.65 million. So it's clearly above and beyond that. We also see in terms of demographics for F40s, it's typically boomers that are interested in these, but it's also Gen X is coming up and they're becoming a lot more interested in the F40. So I think it's, probably it will, I think the market for these will likely to continue to appreciate.
Yeah, and Jim, we know one thing. What John just said is this car is going to break a lot of the rules.
Sure.
This is not going to be, something that was loved by this generation. It's going to be loved by the past, the present, and the future generation.
Yeah, this has it all.
This car has it all. And while we're talking over here, just tell me a little bit about your thoughts, because Jim, you're right in that demographic. That is.
This was on video games when I was a kid. This car. I mean, so it's iconic. But one thing that's important to note to the people who are watching, something I learned here, like with the Porsches, you always want the Euro version. In this particular case, what I've learned is that the U.S. version of this car is actually the one that's more sought after because it's a little more horsepower and some changes for the federal regulations.
Yeah, and
this was a U.S. car.
Yeah, the bladder. Well, it's supposedly a more desirable car. It has a little lip on it. The bladder doesn't need to be changed in 10 years. It's made of a different material, John, and maybe you could share some insight there.
Yeah, I think the F50, the successor of this car, it shares that price dynamic, so that the US spec cars at the F50 are worth a bit more than the Euro spec cars. So, or also cars that have been converted from Euro spec to North American spec. So it's important when you're looking at vehicles like the F40 and the F50 to make sure that you understand what is which spec it is and what's the most desirable one.
Yeah, it's interesting. It really is interesting that when you look at Porsche, especially in a lot of other marques, that the European ones, because of emissions in the U.S., those always had a little bit more power. The ROW Porsches had a little bit more desirable, and for obvious reasons. So
yeah, and I mean, I think just going back to sort of differences in Porsche and rest of world and BMW too, and whether or not the Euro spec is more valuable than the North American spec. I think with those vehicles, there may be more, the demand comes from driving opportunities. And, do you have a lighter car? Do you have a car with more horsepower? Where I think with Ferraris, especially of the F40 and F50, it's more of, collectability and, 2,900 miles. And, where's the biggest market going to be? And that's, at the moment, that's, in the US. So I think that's your biggest likely pool of buyers. And, it's maybe easier to register and things. So those are, I think, potentially why you have different premiums and different for Porsche versus Ferrari and US spec versus versus rest of world spec.
Yeah, very good point. You can't use that basic rule of thumb on all them. There's always little caveats and different types of important things to know about the different marques and how they're affected value-wise in different parts of the world even. So we're going to go on to the next car here, gentlemen, which is a 1997 993 Carrera 4S. I don't think anything has blown my mind more than these cars. When you look at these cars, the 2S, obviously less produced, more desirable, lighter weight, more agile, more of a fun sports car. A lot of people love the 4S for obvious reasons, but you lose the twin grille. But look at this. This is it. You can't see it, John, can you? I'm sorry.
I can bring it up online.
Just picture an absolutely beautiful. I'm looking at the one that sold here the other day, and black, and everyone here you could see what I'm showing you. The 993 market is one of the cars that has benefited from this recent wave of values increasing for good reason. Gorgeous car. It's air cooled, but it's reliable. You could take this, for a 400-mile trip and not worry. Your air conditioning kind of works, and it's a lovely automobile and one of everyone's favorites. But Jim, what is it? Let's talk about this car for a second. Sure. This car tell them what happened at the end here. I mean, this car just took off.
Car, because obviously we can't disclose reserves, but this car definitely exceeded expectations. And we had to ask ourselves, is this a fluke? And then when we sold another one 3-4 days later for a similar number, we said, okay, so something's going on here now. This is what the pricing was when you saw them at the top. This is when a 10,000-mile car was $200,000. So, you would get a 60,000-mile car selling in the low to mid ones like this. So this is where we're back at that kind of level. This example looks like it warranted it for sure. It was a clean car, it was nicely presented, but certainly, if you looked at what these were selling for a year ago with this kind of mileage, this has gone up considerably, from that point,
So, John, what is Hagerty seeing on these 993s? And
yeah, certainly the 993 values, were up a lot in 2015 and 2016 in that era, but in the past 3 years, our price guide values for 993s, and especially sort of the more desirable spec ones, have been pretty flat. So only up 2% in the past 3 years. So not, wild appreciation, but also holding pretty steady. And, the question is that sort of an opportunity to get into the market for these? And the other thing that I think is potentially a tailwind for these is the 993s, is that this is one of the most, favorite 911 generations for Gen Xers. And so, as they're becoming kind of up and coming and collectors, they're really like 993s and, potentially peak earnings and building collections and stuff. So it seems like that's a good sign for the 993 market.
And so there you go. So basically, it spans, like we talked before, like the F40 in a completely different way. It spans all the generations. This is not a car that the 70-year-old is forgetting about. He wants a 993. This is also the upcoming collector who may be in their 30s wants a 993. So that you're right. It's desirable for the ones that are up-and-coming collectors that have the cash right now, but it spans all of the generations, Jim. We noticed that,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody loves a 993. I mean, unless you just don't like Porsches, but.
So to move on here, we have here, John, a 2019 GT3 Touring Miami Blue. This was not a PTS, right? It was just a beautiful, beautiful. Listen, whether you're a Miami Blue fan or not, this is a striking automobile. And the market on these 7-8 months ago were down. And you could have bought one of these, for less money. And now here they go.
Yeah, but again, color and build played a role.
Always does.
Even though it's not PTS, it's still in that category. If somebody wants an eye-catching touring, this is going to be on your list, right? You're looking at this car for sure. Great seller. He's a real world-class Porsche guy. He sold 2 cars with us, private gentleman, and this car was spec'd to the 9s. You know what I mean? So
what a gorgeous automobile.
But we this is not the first touring we saw bring a number with a 2 in the past 30 to 60 days. So. It seems spring is here. People have the money and they want their tours.
Yeah, and many would say this is the greatest modern Porsche as far as being able to do everything. You could track it, you can drive it to dinner, and you can do everything in between in a fantastic way. So what's your take on this car and the price that it did and the values?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's hard to ignore the color, but I think in this case it works. Hagerty, we recently started looking into how color affects the value of Porsches, and found some interesting results about sort of warmer colors being more valuable. But we did a follow-up survey and polled our users online about what's the most popular color Porsche.
Interesting.
And there were some interesting results. The number 1 favorite color was Guards Red. However, the interesting thing was we had 170 or different color choices. So the second most popular color was, I believe, Mexico Blue, and then third was GT Silver, and then fourth was Miami Blue. And if Mexico Blue and Miami Blue are pretty similar colors, so if those had been the same, or if people had voted all for one or the other, that would have been the most popular color. So it's an interesting dynamic, and there's a lot of people that really like these bright colors, these bright blues. There are also a lot of people that like, Guards Red and GT Silver, but this color is, I think, a pretty popular one in the Porsche world.
So let me back up and understand that. You're saying the most popular color was Guards Red?
Yeah, well, that's, the strange, a lot of people were a bit surprised by that, but, I think it was, we didn't distinguish which model it was. So, somebody it could have been a 944, it could have been a Carrera 3.2. And so we didn't distinguish or differentiate, which Porsche you wanted your color on. And I think it's, there are probably, close to 100 different shades of blue that Porsche offers, but there are only about a dozen or so different shades of red. And so there's, if somebody wants a red Porsche, they have a pretty limited choice. There's cars like Arena Red and there's Guards Red, but not too many. Whereas, you have Miami Blue and Mexico Blue, and you have sort of darker shades of blue and things. So I think people, if they want a blue car, there's 100 or so different shades. But if you want a red car, much fewer.
Yeah, I'm one of my favorite. First of all, Carmine Red we love.
I was going to say on the touring, especially.
On the touring is beautiful, and also Polo on the F bodies is probably one of my favorite colors on that car. I'm not a big red. I'm shocked though. Guards Red I could see being the most popular, but not the most
sought after.
Because when you look at an SC or really any G body, I think there is a 25% increase leaving God's Red and going to
anything other than God's Red. It's not black.
Well, I think
like look at those cars we sold, the linen. Some of those.
Right.
Yeah,
Then you go into extremes. But I'm saying if you have God's Red here and all else being equal. Yeah. If this is God's Red, if you can see my hand, everybody.
Then look at the Granite Green one that's on right now.
That's what I'm saying. So you look at all these different colors and there's different premiums. Then you get to the top colors, and I think there's as much as a 25%, all things being equal. That is look at the Riviera Blue 993, John, that sold years ago. I think there was a $200,000 price
Well, you know what?
difference.
What John's saying is making sense, is because if you have this many Porsche buyers, right? And this many want Guards Red. That's why the prices are here. Yeah. But when you have a color like this Granite Green, you're lucky to get one of those on auction a year.
Yes.
And if there's 3 people that want it, they're going to pay triple what a Guards Red car costs, because there's one car and there's 3 people that want it. So
listen, they have the data. One thing about Hagerty that's very important for all of us is when we want the real information and we want the real documented, official information. This is a resource that's very, very important for all of us. And at the end of the day, yes, facts speak, and that comes into play on values of cars. There's a lot of emotion, John, right, involved in these cars. Yeah. It really is. When somebody wants, like that ivory car, and when you look at the linen, people are willing to fight for that car, to a point where some of us cannot relate, but the facts are the facts, and we appreciate Hagerty having that available to us. And John, just so I understand, where does someone find that information? You just go to Hagerty.com and you can kind of
we have, so we have our valuation tools, which have price guide values. We also have our insider newsletter. And so there's a main media page, which has stories about sort of modern cars and collector cars and things. And then we have an insider newsletter, which is market focused. And so we have stories about, what's this Porsche color survey. We also look at auction reports and vehicles, how did this particular vehicle sell at an auction? Yep. We also have other, I write a newsletter article that's about different segments of the market. So what's happening in the 1950s American car market and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Insider newsletters, good.
Yeah, there's a lot more to Hagerty than what we're talking about here today. But the one other thing I wanted to say, resource-wise, is Renbo. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Renbo, a great place to find out how rare a color is. Is that run by Porsche or is that
the Porsche Club of America?
PCA. Yep. Okay, so you can that's Renbo, and you can see how rare it is. I think there's
cool.
There's actually a rating on the rarity, and then they even show the color swatch, and you can even see the actual car in that color. And when we were actually building our new hot rod, we're building a 4.0 G body, not a backdate, but a really beautiful. Well, you'll all get a chance to see it soon enough. We actually use that a lot, that tool, just to pick a color, and you'll see what we wound up doing. But anyway, so great
resource.
Yes, great resource for sure. So let's go on to the next car here. The next car is a 2001 996 Turbo Coupe. These, John Wiley, are becoming very, very. First of all, it's a great photo. This car makes the color killer. But tell us about Hagerty's perspective, your perspective on this particular car. The 2001, the 996 Turbo, because it really spans different generations again. What do you see it now, and where do you see this car's future?
Yeah, I think they're gradually becoming more appreciated. Hagerty, we do this bull market list. And so every year we'll come out with about a dozen or so vehicles that we expect to appreciate more than most, or are most confident that they will appreciate in the next 12 months. And so the 996 Turbo was on our list for 2018. However, they've only appreciated about 8% since then. So it wasn't a big win for us in terms of picks. Maybe that was too soon. One of the other vehicles on the list that year was the BMW E46 M3. And that has appreciated, I think, like 37%.
Wow, okay.
Since the pick. So it's tough. I think with the 996 Turbo, it sort of, as it gets more expensive, maybe it becomes a little bit more like the 997. And so it's, whereas I think with cars like the BMW M3, there isn't quite the same replacement with the E90 generation. So, but I think there's, I think it still remains a really good sort of performance choice for the market.
I think what Hagerty did was maybe you were right. It's just a little too early because the points that you probably used were reliability, look, value compared to its the other offerings out there, and it was always too cheap. And we agree 100%. We think we actually have a debate here. We were at a car show over the weekend. A friend of mine has a 996 turbo, and he keeps saying that these cars are through the roof. They're through the roof. I'm like, well, you own one, and I know you want to believe that, but they're not. They actually, if you buy a 996 turbo for $45,000, $48,000, $50,000, $55,000, Jim, depending on the mileage, I'm not talking about X51 or S. I'm talking about a turbo, a nice turbo. There is some beautiful upside in that car. And I think Hagerty is there.
Yeah, well, I'm going to defend John. I don't think they were necessarily that wrong. I just don't think the market sees enough comps on what I would consider cars worthy of that increase. Like, for example, we had an X50 that sold with 11,000 miles for 74. That's kind of where 997 turbos were 3-4 years ago. So, you know what I mean? So this car, just last year, I recall a comp. I remember we sold a 24,000 mile one for like 52. This car sold for very close to that, and it says double the mileage. So, you have, when I have a nice example, I know you have that deal tank one to show as a converse, because we had
we'll do that next.
a car with less mileage that didn't get near this number because of, when a car is worthy of it, it's going to bring that money.
Yep.
Plus, this guy did great photos. He was smart enough to showcase that his air conditioning works well because his windows fogged up in that cover photo. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but it shows that the AC works. But this, you could tell, is I guess we'll say a sorted car, and it looks like a really, really nice example.
Yes,
and
yes.
that's what's hard to find. There's 996 turbos everywhere, but when you weed out the Tiptronics and the ones that aren't serviced and don't have the coolant lines pinned and all that stuff.
And you also, John Wiley, I know that you guys do not take this in consideration because you shouldn't, but we see here the presentation of a car has a great effect on it. So you have color, condition, all the typical things, but then you could put two cars, and I'm not just talking about the photos, but here's a perfect example. Here's another car that we had. Here's a car that had the wrong wheels.
Half the mileage.
That had the rear wheels were really front tire size wheels.
They're fake. They're replica 997 turbo wheels.
Replica 997 turbo wheels that didn't fit right. It's just the presentation is unbelievable. So with all the information that you share and that we could share, you have to worry about your presentation, fix things on the car before you put it to auction.
Right.
Make sure, take the aftermarket stripes off the car, those crazy personalized stripes, and clean it and detail it, and the result can change. Do you agree that the result could be quite different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, before the pandemic, we spent a lot of effort and time sort of sending people out to look at cars in person at auctions. And so I think in 2019 or so, we looked at close to like 16,000 cars at auctions and to condition them and sort of say, is this a show car? Is it a driver? Is it, have problems and things? And, oftentimes, just sort of really kind of basic stuff would help improve the result, the sale price, if they just clean the engine bay or something, or clean the interior, or, those kinds of little things. But, with online auctions, our observations like that, if somebody makes that same observation, that's available to everybody.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go on here now. I think we're going to leave Porsche for a second. And I know that Jim and you are both BMW. Obviously, your expertise spans many, many, many different brands, and so does Jim's. And we're going to buzz over here to just a cute little Z3 2.8 Roadster. Tell us a little bit about this car.
I always love these cars.
Yeah,
because in the 90s, the big three. Well, Audi wasn't really involved till later when they had the TT, but BMW, Porsche, and Mercedes just came out with these fun little roadsters that were kind of affordable. You had the SLK, you had this, and you had the Boxster. And again, remember in the 90s, what a car like this looked like in the street. This was like a work of art. They were fun little cars, and they've stood the test of time. They're pretty reliable.
Yeah.
There's not really big, maintenance bills on them. Half of these don't have power tops, you know what I mean? So you don't have to worry about that. That's one of the number one things you have to worry about with a convertible. And most importantly, it's a fun car to drive if you could fit in it.
Yeah.
I'm a little too tall for this car. I've had a few of them. I still like them. I still probably will get another one day, but it's not a car I would go on a 2-3 hour ride. I could be in a Boxster. I drove to Florida in a Boxster from New York. I could do that. This car, I couldn't do it in, so.
John?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, those are good points. And, I think this has, some things that BMW no longer offers, which is, a naturally aspirated inline-six engine and a 5-speed. And, that's, they don't really offer that much anymore. And so it's a really good combination of a vehicle that has, performance and looks and style, but, is a reasonable price.
Yeah, no doubt. And these are kind of cult type cars. You love them or you hate them. These have I know this is the gentleman who actually sold this is a lover of this this genre of automobile.
He sells BMWs for probably 20 years.
That's right. Yeah. He's a BMW. He actually works at the BMW store as well, but he loves to play with a little bit of the older ones because that's where his heart is.
Yeah, and this is his personal car, and
yeah,
and what's nice is these cars, this could appeal to someone who's not even a car enthusiast, like someone who just wants a nice convertible. Maybe they have a beach house or they want to drive to their boat in the summer. Yeah. You could just sell this to anybody. It has such a wide, it's like, almost like the way a Mini Cooper appeals to so many different demographics. This car's like that. You know what?
Whatever part of the country you're in, whether it be the South, the shore by in Jersey,
right,
or in Atlanta or California or even the Hamptons here in Long Island, what a great car to have and buzz around in. And that's why they hold their value, and they'll always have some that cult following because they really do have
and
such
they
great
have
appeal.
They have a nice car club. You know what I mean? So there's always an event you can go to.
That's right.
It's nice. It's nice. Yeah.
So John, if you would humor us for another few moments, I'm just going to go into a few other cars that that are not results, that are on there live right now, that we want to offer and talk to people about, and maybe you could share some values. Let me see if I can get this right here. Okay, so
that's what we were just talking about.
We were just we actually were talking about this car. Look at this car, John. This
is that granite green one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a 40,000 mile, 1988 Carrera G50, granite green metallic. Look at the interior of this car. Absolutely an incredible automobile. Nice photos, good seller, detailed information, and I believe a nice video. So this car is pulls at the heartstrings of a lot of people. And again, if you would have told me 6 months ago, 7 months ago, a year ago maybe, I would say that this car ends right where it is right now. Today, I'm not surprised if this car gets into the 80s. Mm-hmm. Am I crazy?
Could even surpass that.
This car could do This car could do $100,000.
It could.
Yeah, I mean, I think the color is great because it's unique, but it isn't too wild. And so, I think if you're a Porsche enthusiast, you appreciate that it's an unusual color. But for most people, it's not, doesn't stand out quite like a Miami blue or Mexico blue.
Right.
So
that's right.
I think that's an appealing feature of it. I mean, that's personal preference, but yeah, it's very well presented. It's clean. We have a condition to value of this car for $66,000, so it's already there. And yeah, I mean, it's this market, it's likely to sell for a lot more than that.
Yeah, and I think what you said is very important here, John, that there are cars that, as beautiful as they are, you lose a lot of the market because I love this, but I would never buy one. This is a car that really everyone would consider because it's a little different, but it is not strangely loud and too attention grabbing, other than for the fact that it's a beautiful, well-presented car.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we love this, Jim, right?
Yeah. And we had that M491 in this color that did really, really, really well. Everyone
that was Granite. Okay,
it was Granite green. Yeah.
Fabulous color, beautiful interior. Okay, let's just buzz on to the next one here, which is a little different flavor. 3,000 mile, 2018 718 Boxster in PTS Gulf Orange. Of beautiful orange. You have to like orange to like this car, but it's very striking. John, what's Hagerty's take on these at this time? A 718 Boxster.
Yeah, I mean, this is
You smiled at this one. You smiled at this one. Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's it's sort of the opposite of the Granite Green, which is that you have a color that stands out a lot. And I don't, it's hard because this is a 4-cylinder, and it's and you have sort of the new GT cars, Porsche Boxster Spider that's out. So, but maybe somebody wants that Gulf orange color. It certainly is. It's I imagine that there are very few, or if any, others that are like this.
That's a good question. There may not be another one of these.
No, that's why it's on here.
Yeah.
It's a conversation piece. I don't know where this one goes. I mean, but like I said, there's the 718. They went back to the 6-cylinder now, right, with the GTS. They made it a 4.0.
Yeah,
but the prices have gone through the roof.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, you could pay over $100,000 for not even a Boxster Spider now. So that's crazy.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean, so you got to paint the sample. You got to stick. That's another big thing with this car.
Oh, there you go.
So,
okay.
So we'll see if this finds a home on here. It probably will.
It probably will. Fantastic eyeballs. I mean, the car is gorgeous.
Yeah.
If you like orange, and this car is going to be a fun, lightweight, to really enjoy this car. Yeah, without a doubt. Okay, next one here. Let's take a quick look at the. Here's a nice 240Z. Beautiful, beautiful. John, what do you think? What is? Let me see if you're smiling. Not as quite as much, but there it is. Okay, so this car has to evoke emotion. I look at this car, and what do you have? 73 over here. So at this time, what's out? A 911 Carrera is out. There's what is BMW's offering back in 73?
I guess a 2002, right?
A 2002, the turbo.
Yeah.
If you want to go extreme, but what a fun time to be looking for a car. What do you think about this one, John?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of increasing interest in 240Zs. So actually, our price guide values for these are up 42% in the past 3 years, which is substantial. I mean, these cars have been pretty affordable for a long time, but I think collectors are really starting to appreciate them. And, in something like a BMW, even the 2002 TII, in really great condition is now close to 6 figures. So a car like this that has a lot of that same performance but looks probably better, at half that is still a really good deal. And the other thing that's unusual about the 240Z is its demographics, and that they're everybody, Gen Xers, Boomers, Millennials, they all seem to appreciate the 240Z about the same. So that's, I think, it says a lot about sort of its appeal.
Yes. Once again, spanning the generations, which is why this car is worth what it is and will continue to grow. My heart's with this car for sure, and I don't know anyone that doesn't like a 240Z. I mean, it's just such a gorgeous automobile, and you know what? And it's a nice driving car. A lot of times you see a car like this, you get behind the wheel, and it's always underwhelming. It's always going to disappoint you because of what your expectations are. This is a nice driving car. Yeah. This actually is a sports car, a proper sports car, and a fun car to drive. Laid out nicely. The dash is nice ergonomically. It's pretty comfortable, all things considered. Great photos on this one. Great presentation, and I love this car.
Yeah, me too.
I love this car.
That's a pretty car.
Yeah, I mean,
nicely presented and
nicely presented. We had another one on here a few days ago that was a hot rod.
Yeah,
that also
that was nice.
That was, I don't know if you saw that one, John. It had a bumper delete. It was a 280Z.
Yeah,
but it was beautiful. It struck a nerve as well in a completely different way. But this car is really fabulous. Really fabulous.
Yeah, I think it's a great combination of that sort of bright blue and the white interior.
Yeah, you know what?
Period look.
Yeah, there's not, I was never one of those to love the white interiors, but it works on this car. It really does. It almost has like that, what's that oyster? Like, has like a little oyster. It's not like that striking white, although it is striking white. It's like an oyster. It's a little bit off of that bright
I'd say
white
that steering wheel makes the whole interior, though.
Oh,
right?
it's incredible.
What a nice contrast.
But when you look at like the GT 500s back then, the 71 Shelbys, the white interior on that car was really white, and I just didn't really. There was something about that. This over here, my brother had a Firebird that was kind of like this, where it had that kind of an oyster, they called it, which is a little bit off white, and it kind of blends and kind of goes a little less striking. But you're right, though, the steering wheel is killer. So finally, we have one more here. I believe we have one more. Actually,
two.
we have two more. Here is a car that is going to be ending soon. And all these are on Pcarmarket, by the way. These are live auctions right now. So please take a look on your own and browse through these. The final car is one of my favorites. I've always wanted one of these.
Yeah.
This is a 17,000-mile 2012 Audi R8 4.2 Quattro 6-speed, which looks almost like what the car launched with. What year was this? What year did this car come out?
Oh, wait.
Okay. And this is kind of the color scheme, was it?
Well, they was silver with the carbon blade, but I saw a lot of these too.
A carbon blade, yeah.
Yeah, but on the carbon blade, you kind of lose it in this gray, so I actually don't mind the silver one.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, John, Wiley, is your personal taste on a car like this? We want to know a little bit about John as the car enthusiast. This type of car appeal to you? The manual Audis?
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, I actually had a chance to drive one of these at an event when they first came out, and it was a track day, and this was in Chicago at the Autobahn Country Club there, and I was just amazed by how quickly the V8 spun and how quickly this is driver error, but letting it would hit red line pretty quick. So, but yeah, that transmission with the open gate is a lot of fun, and you have the Quattro system, and I think the appeal of this car is that V8. It's a little bit smaller than the V10, but you also have the manual transmission, and we have in the price guide, we have a 20% deduction for the R-tronic transmission. So this car with its 6-speed manual, is worth more than sort of any of those that have the R-tronic. And I don't know how rare the 6-speed manual is compared to the R-tronic, but it's probably a lot less common. And I think these cars, if it's anything like the Ferrari market in terms of valuing the manual transmission over the paddle shift transmissions, the manual transmission cars are going to be worth a lot more.
Yeah, no doubt. And this seems to be one of those models where the manual transmission is so sought after that there's a dramatic effect in values.
Yeah.
And fun.
Good looking.
And good looking. But the gated shifter here on this car, I know a few people that own these gated shifter 8-cylinder cars, and they will never, ever sell them. They are so in love with these cars. I've tried to pull and pry one or two out of their hands, but with no avail. That's not going to happen. Yeah, beautiful car. Any other thoughts about this one?
I just love it. I love it. What can I say? I mean, I think you and I agree. It's for those who don't know, this is a Lamborghini Gallardo with the underpinnings, and if you get this with the V10, it's like the same car. But I like this car all day long, looks-wise, better than the Lamborghini. I think they probably made a mistake. I think that was the Audi, and this was Lamborghini, and someone goofed, and then once it was public, they said we can't announce an error, so we'll just leave it that way. Because how could this not have been the Lamborghini? Look at this car. This car's amazing.
I always say when something evokes emotion, there's something special about it.
Even the interior, this one wraps around you better than the Gallardo. I mean, it's just
Audi always made their interiors have always been extraordinary in really everything that they built.
And then it's funny they used the gauge cluster out of an A4 Cabrio in the Gallardo, and this one had a nicer gauge cluster. I just don't understand it. This had to have been the Lamborghini. I'm telling you, this is something.
Yeah, maybe the conspiracy theory has begun.
Look at it. If anyone cares, go look at the gauge cluster on a Gallardo, and then look at a 2004 A4 convertible. It's exactly the same gauge cluster.
Yeah. Yeah, but beautiful, beautiful. Anyway, I think we're going to leave it there. We went a little bit more than we wanted to, but John Wiley from Hagerty, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks. I've enjoyed being on here.
Yeah, for getting up early and giving a great perspective. And for all of you watching, check out Hagerty, not only for, obviously, I personally use Hagerty, and I'm going to recommend them for business. We used them at the dealership at the time, and great company, great people, and they serve the industry in a great way. And obviously, they have tremendous information well beyond their insurance product, and we thank you so much for all of that. Jim, thanks again.
Anytime.
John, thank you. And all of you, we know you have a lot of choices when it comes to spending your time and what you're going to watch. You choosing to watch our show is very important to us, and we appreciate it. So we'll catch you on the next episode of Inside the Market. My name is David Jacobson, and thank you for watching.